You're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, 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 other than day one.
Donald Trump has successfully moved the Overton window in a way that is as dangerous for the future of democracy in this country as anything else.
This is what Vout and Project 2025 wanted.
Newsom is he's daring Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it? I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great.
They control the Congress, they control the White House, and they control the courts. And so, of course, they're massively overreaching. And yes, they are getting away with it right now.
This is clearly a man who cannot tolerate criticism of him or what he does, which is exactly what authoritarianism is all about.
The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. They really are the enemy of the people.
What he is saying, rather bluntly, if you stand up to Donald Trump, he will punish you.
Protesters in Philadelphia, state capitals in California, Minnesota, Michigan, Texas, Wisconsin, Indiana, and others showed up to oppose Trump, Musk, and Project 2025.
US and President Trump has overseen America's largest military parade in decades as nationwide protests take place against his leadership.
Demonstrations are happening right across the United States today to oppose the Trump administration.
Two visions of America. On a day the country's deepening divide was there for all the world to see.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I am Jeff Waldorf, your host for Logically Left, because it makes sense. Welcome. We've got a pretty, informative / disastrous show for you today. We got some bad news, as usual. We got the Johnson Amendment, which basically prevents churches from making official endorsements for candidates. That is gone, but kind of. So there's a bit of a carve out, okay? And I will get to that story. I'm saving like the worst for last, so I'm gonna send you all home you're probably already home, but I'll send you all for the rest of your day depressed. So yeah, it's just a little service that I do. But anyway, we've got that to talk about, which is disastrous news. We got Flyin Ted Cruz. Americans on Medicaid, well, they got a plan for you, okay? First, they're telling you to get a job, and then they're telling you what kind of job. So, you're not going to want to miss the details on that. And then Christy Goguen caught bragging about misusing FEMA funds, sending it to Alligator Auschwitz. Yeah, so I've got the details on that. I'm at work. Well, there you go. So, yeah, sending you off to the rest of your workday depressed. It's what I do. It's a service. Probably a terrible service, but it's a service. All right, anyway, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. And why don't we dive in to the stories? We'll start out with Ted Cruz. Oh, where is that?
Trump called your wife ugly. I do love that.
Yeah, I have to. Every time there's Ted Cruz story, I should play that sound clip because it's freaking hilarious. That's why. Okay. It appears that Texas Senator Ted Cruz may have a knack for bad timing, or maybe good timing. It depends on your perspective, right? Now, I'm specifically talking about when he goes on vacation. That's right. Flyin Ted Cruz was actually spotted over the Independence Day weekend visiting the Greek capital of Athens and the Parthenon. This is while his state dealt with massive, disastrous, deadly flash flooding. So, okay, look, I get it. You know, you do a vacation, you're going to have a little fun, do some traveling over the Independence Day weekend. That's fine. Although, it's a little strange that he didn't spend his time in America. Like he goes and visits Greece. Well, weren't all these right-wingers, it was years and years ago, complaining about Greece. Oh, Greece, socialism. Oh, my God, the worst place in the world. Socialism. It's going to make Greece fall apart. And this guy's visiting Greece. Look, I like Greece. Okay? I don't have any problems with it. But it's weird that, right-wingers like Ted Cruz love to visit these countries that they criticize, for actually spending money on average people, poor people. Bit strange. Bit odd. But anyway, he was there. And that's not even the main problem, okay? The problem is the fact that he was there while people in his state were drowning from these floods. That's a problem. Again, he was at the Parthenon on Saturday, which is the day after Camp Mystic announced that more than 20 girls and other staff had gone missing in the flood waters. On Saturday, July 5th, about 6 p.m. local time, more than 24 hours after the Guadalupe River burst its banks by about 26 feet. Okay? Cruz and his wife were there. They were in Greece. They were at the Parthenon. They're just having a good old time. And it's funny because someone there actually called him out in person. According to an eyewitness, quote, he was with his family and a lone security guard. As he walked past us, I simply said, 20 kids dead in Texas, and you take a vacation? Now, of course, his response is, he sort of just grunted and walked on. His wife shot me a dirty look. Then they continued on with their tour guide. Yeah. How dare you interrupt my vacation? Did you know I work hard taking food and medical care away from poor people? I deserve a break. How dare you? How dare you, pleb, approach the great and mighty Ted Cruz? Look, this is not the first time, of course, that Ted Cruz has faced criticism for taking a holiday while his constituents suffer from natural disasters. You, of course, remember back in 2021 when Cruz took his family on a trip to Cancun. Man, beautiful Cancun. This is while Texas was being hit by a disastrous winter storm that left millions in the state freezing without power or water. Thanks to that good old Texas power grid. Jeez. Now, of course, he defended the trip by throwing his kids under the bus. Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to be a good dad. Kids really wanted to go. What was I supposed to do? You know what? Now, I had to return because it just didn't feel right, guys. Oh, really? Are you sure it had nothing to do with the horrific optics and massive criticism that you received, Ted? Okay, but look, the timing here for his vacations is curious. I'm just saying. It is a bit curious. I mean, Cruz landed in Athens on Thursday. That is the day after the Texas Division of Emergency Management announced that it was activating state emergency response resources. And on the day Cruz touched down in Europe, NPR reported that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick had held a press conference as acting governor because where's the actual governor? Maybe he's on taking another trip. I don't know. But Patrick warned of all the potential flooding that would hit overnight. So basically what I'm saying there is they knew what was coming. They knew. The following day, on Friday, July 4th, the lieutenant governor was forced to call a second press conference to address the scale of the disaster. So again, not only was Ted Cruz not there, the senator, neither was the governor, which is weird. It's just kind of weird. That they just disappear every time that there is a disaster in their state. Kind of strange. Now, Cruz didn't come back until Sunday, and then on Monday arrived in Kerrville, which had gotten hit really, really hard by these floods. And so now he got in his vacay, and then he came home and went back to work. What's the problem here? Okay. Now, if you ask him, he'll say, well, look, I came back as soon as humanly possible. Okay, so don't criticize me. How dare you criticize me? But wait, that's not true. That's not true. You ask him, okay, and again, he'll say, I came back quickly, but when you look at the records, when you look at his flight data, look, multiple flights, okay, from Athens to San Antonio, Texas happened on Friday, July 4th, and Saturday, July 5th. That's after the floods hit. And while it is not known how many seats were available on each of those flights, there were other possible options, including flights leaving Athens on Saturday morning and landing in San Antonio that evening via Chicago, Atlanta, or Washington, D.C. So he had options. All right. And so not only that, but earlier flights were also available on Friday once the seriousness of the floods was becoming apparent by these officials that were paying attention. So look, due to high demand, several airlines had also announced this year that Greece would have more direct air connections with the United States than it has ever had. So there you go. But look, apparently Ted really wanted to finish up his holiday trip, okay? So get off his nuts. He hasn't. Look, I mean, who cares about the deadly flooding when we've got the opportunity to play tourist, especially after he helped slash funding for weather forecasts, and that is not an exaggeration. Ted Cruz specifically inserted language into the big, beautiful bill prior to its signing by Donald Trump on Friday, eliminating a $150 million fund to accelerate advances and improvements in research, observation systems, modeling, forecasting, yes, weather forecasting, assessments, and dissemination of information to the public around the weather. In addition, a $50 million NOAA grant to study climate-related impacts on oceans, weather systems, and coastal ecosystems was also removed from the bill. So, yeah. Oops. Turns out, Flyin Ted not only got the weather forecaster's ability to do that before running off to Greece, but also let's remember that Ted Cruz has been doing the bidding of the big oil industry for years. He's, of course, a climate change denier, always has been. He's loved giving money to fossil fuel companies, deregulating those same companies, allowing for more and more pollution, of course, carbon, dioxide, more of that into the atmosphere, all of that. And so, yeah, that's the problem. Experts in climate science point out that this storm was made even more intense and therefore more deadly as a result of climate change. According to Andrew Dessler, a climate scientist at Texas A&M, quote, "We have added a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, and that extra carbon traps energy in the climate system. Because of this extra energy, every weather event we see now carries some influence from climate change. The only question is how big of an influence that is. Basic physics already tells us that climate change very likely made this event stronger." I think it is safe to say that Ted Cruz helped bring about this disaster, along with, of course, all the climate deniers, the fossil fuel companies, Donald Trump, the GOP Congress, but let's not forget the Democrats, of course. You got pro-fossil fuel Democrats like Henry Cuellar, Joe Manchin, just to give you a couple of examples of how this big money from fossil fuels also goes to both parties. But what's worse, okay, is that deep down, all of these people know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and they don't care. And that's because they're paid not to. And there you go. Sensible Streamer says, they haven't enforced the Johnson Amendment in practice. Yes, and I will absolutely get to that, because that is something that I'm going to talk about as well. But yes, absolutely absolutely correct. Y'all gotta wait till I get to that story. But yes, I do believe that they should enforce the Johnson Amendment, both against churches that, have endorsed Democrats, because some have, but also think of the historically black churches, for example, the HBCs, but also think of the Republicans, the churches that obviously are pro-Republican. There's a lot of those. And what's worse is that the nonprofits, the whole carve-out thing, the nonprofits, which are, a lot of them are secular institutions, still have the Johnson Amendment enforced against them. So, but I'll get to all the details in that story. But thank you for bringing that up. And you can say, see that I'm pretty excited to get into that story. But I got to leave it to the last. Okay. Let's go to Christina. Homeland Security Secretary Christy Goguen is facing some backlash after a post from earlier this month showed her bragging about taking FEMA funds in order to build Alligator Alcatraz, or what we like to call Alligator Auschwitz. On July 1st, the puppy killer posted this. Alligator Alcatraz will be funded largely by FEMA's Shelter and Services Program, which the Biden administration uses a piggy bank to spend hundreds of millions of American taxpayer dollars to house illegal aliens. And then she goes on. So she is, of course, celebrating this as a political win and contrasting it with the previous uses of the FEMA Shelter and Services Program, which she, again, claimed that was supporting illegals, of course. So, yeah, what she's saying is, hey, look, I took money that was sheltering migrants in New York and I put it towards a concentration camp. Yeah, to MAGA. Oh, that's not something that I want to do, much less, brag about doing. But MAGA loves it. We know they love it. The more cruel you are to migrants, the more MAGA gets hard over it. I'm just saying, that's what they do. But now that Texas was hit by deadly flash floods that have killed over 100 people and caused about $18 to $22 billion in estimated damage, her post has gotten more scrutiny, especially since the concentration camp is expected to cost roughly $450 million a year to operate. Yes, that's right. A year. That's $250 per bed per day. All paid for by us, the U.S. taxpayer. Great, awesome, fantastic, lovely. What an excellent use of money that could have been, going right now to shelter families in Texas affected by the floods. But here's the thing, though. FEMA, they've been gutted by this administration. They really have. According to reports, more than a third of FEMA's permanent full-time workforce has been fired or accepted buyouts, including some of its most experienced and knowledgeable leaders who coordinate disaster response. That includes 2 senior meteorologists at the San Antonio National Weather Service office, which is responsible for forecasting in the Hill County region, which was hit really, really hard by this. One of them was the warning coordination meteorologist, who usually is responsible for liaising with local emergency managers. They help translate National Weather Service forecasts into likely impact reports, which helps to inform local actions like warnings and evacuation orders. Kind of important. Now, of course, without those experienced people, the necessary actions either come late or not at all, with deadly consequences. Samantha Montano, professor of emergency management at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, said, quote, "This is the exact kind of storm that meteorologists, climate scientists, emergency management experts have been talking about and warning about for decades at this point. And there's absolutely no reason that this won't happen in other parts of the country. This is what happens when you let climate change run unabated and break apart the emergency management system without investing in that system at the local and state level. It takes a lot of money, expertise, and time to eliminate risk and make sure that agencies are prepared to respond when a flood situation like in Texas happens. And if you eliminate those preparedness efforts, if you fire the people who do that work, then the response will not be effective. Yes, true, but counterpoint, at least we got a concentration camp. One where, people are going to die. In fact, people already have died. At least 12 people have already died in ICE custody so far this year. That is the same number in 6 months, 7 months, that died in all of 2024. And that number is going to get bigger. It probably already is. Which is why Nome is actually trying to hide it. How? By defunding the watchdogs. Of course. In fact, employees at the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, or CRCL, the Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, and the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman were abruptly suspended in March and given a separation date of May 23rd. Nome's budget, her requests for the fiscal year of 2026, actually zeroed out the Office of Immigration Detention Ombudsman's budget. And that is also as the entire department at the DHS undergoes a massive reduction in force, while at the same time growing detainment and deportation. Yeah. Katie Shepard, who previously served as a senior policy advisor at the CRCL before being removed as part of the DHS oversight cuts, said the agency is, quote, moving in the wrong direction as the Trump administration is doubling down on immigration enforcement and the number of people in custody is rapidly increasing. We should be increasing oversight, not eliminating it. Yes, but that's only if you actually give a damn about the well-being of those people in the facilities. You see what the problem is here? They don't care. They don't care about the people they're putting in these concentration camps. They don't care. And they certainly, obviously, don't want any oversight so that when people die of mistreatment, we're not going to know about it. I mean, how are we going to know if there's no oversight? I mean, look, this is the hallmark of a concentration camp. Not knowing the horrors that are happening within. Look, the German people claimed, and you can argue, like, how much they actually knew, but they would claim that, oh, no, we didn't know how bad it was in Auschwitz. No, you don't understand. We didn't know. We had no idea what was going on here. Now, partly it's because the conditions were hidden from the people. Now, they believed, oh, it was a work camp. Of course it wasn't a work camp. I mean, people had their suspicions, of course, that horrible things were happening in those camps. Of course. But you also had propaganda that was strong. Hey, you know what other government is doing a lot of propaganda right now? Oh, right. Yeah. So, look, not only is Kristi Noem bragging about taking FEMA funding and putting it towards this, but she is also actively trying to prevent people from knowing about the conditions in these camps, what it is really like in there. And so far, I mean, there's already been reports that Alligator Alcatraz has flooded over. So there you go. I don't know how many people are going to die as a result of this, of being stuffed into these horrific camps. I don't know. Maybe we won't know, at least not until we actually have a government that's willing to look into this instead of hiding it. But either way, look, Noem is a disgusting person. I think that's pretty obvious. She's nothing more, in my mind, than a Nazi. And as such, she's doing Nazi things. Okay. Obama hired Tom Homan back in the day. Someone should ask him about that. Yeah, someone should ask Obama about a lot of the appointments of Republicans that he had made. Yep, she shot a puppy in the face. All right, let's move on here. I will read super chats at the end of the show, so I will do that. All right, go to healthcare. Oh boy. The Trump administration has a suggestion. If you're one of the millions of people who are going to lose their health insurance as a result of Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill. Okay, well, what's the suggestion? Go get a job. Just get a job. Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. So who's the one saying this time? Well, it's not John Thune, although he did say that earlier. No, this is the National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett, who was on CBS News' Face the Nation on July 6th, where he said, quote, the bottom line is the best way to get insurance is to get a job. We've got a big, beautiful bill that's going to create a lot of job creation and a lot of insurance. Oh, really? Really? That's not what the CBO is saying. That's not what the experts are saying. That's only what you're saying. The CBO actually predicted that the Senate's draft of the bill would actually result in about 12 million people losing their healthcare coverage. Yeah. And no, by the way, they're not illegals. They're not 35-year-old dudes on Medicaid playing video games in their mom's basements. No. You would be talking about a lot of Republicans there. Let's be clear. No, the majority of people on Medicaid actually do work, about 64%. The rest are disabled caregivers, they're children, they're in school, and so you can't really expect them to work. Okay, I'm just saying. But they are the ones that are at risk of losing their health care, which in some cases is why they're actually able to work. The fact that they have that health care, the fact that they have Medicaid. Look, if you lose your insurance, if you're on Medicaid and you lose your insurance, and you're not able to get your medication because you cannot afford it anymore, well, how are you able to keep your job? Okay, I mean, again, for pain, for certain mental disabilities, if you don't have your medication, you cannot function, and if you cannot function, you cannot work, and if you can't work, well, you see the cycle here. It's going to probably lead to less people working. Oh, the irony. The irony. But yes, no, they just say, oh, yeah, no, just get a job and you can get your health care. That's fine. Just get a job. There are plenty of jobs. Job cannon, right? You can hop in the job cannon and launch towards the job bill or something. I don't know. But here's the thing. If you're already working and you still cannot make enough money to afford health insurance through the private market, which is why they're on Medicaid in the first place, then how the hell does this help you? Oh, right, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. That's right. Look, the CBO noted in a letter that few of those disenrolled from Medicaid because of the policy would end up being able to have access to and enroll in employment-based coverage, and none would be eligible for premium tax credits. And there you go. They noted that the creation of new jobs could therefore only assist those on the program who were not in work due to an inability to find work, which they calculated is about less than 8%. And that's it. Experts have also warned that the administrative burden placed on recipients to log and report working hours, because it is a lot of paperwork, or their exemption, will see many more pushed off the program, meaning that even those already completing the work requirements may lose their coverage, which I suspect is the point. And here's the other thing. Most of those working and on Medicaid work for small businesses. If you're a small business and you have less than 50 employees, you're not likely to be able to offer health insurance, and you're certainly not required to. So there's that. Now, according to Paul Schaefer, professor in health law, policy, and management at Boston University, speaking to Newsweek, said this, quote, about 1 in 5 working adults work for an employer that doesn't offer health insurance, and 1 in 4 workers are not eligible for employer-sponsored insurance. So even having a job doesn't necessarily solve the problem. Jobs that lower-income Americans are more likely to have, like in the service industry and part-time/seasonal jobs, are also less likely to offer coverage. I've never seen any of those types of jobs offer health insurance. Now, according to KFF, in 2024, only 54% of all firms offered some health benefits. 93% of firms with 50 or more workers do offer health benefits in 2024, but just because it's offered doesn't mean you can actually use those benefits. In fact, some of those workers are not eligible to be able to enroll due to factors such as waiting periods or part-time or temporary work status. So a lot of companies will be like, oh no, we're going to cut your hours to about 30. So you're a part-timer. That means you're just not eligible for insurance. Sorry, bro. Oh, what a bad break. And there you go. That's how that works. And others, of course, who are eligible might choose not to enroll. Not because they don't want health insurance, but because, like, hey, I can't afford the premiums. Okay, I cannot afford the premiums. And you've got employers that scale back further and further their contribution to your health plans. And so a lot of workers like, I'm sorry, I can't afford this health care. I can't afford the health insurance. And even if you are enrolled, there are problems there too. Like, for example, yeah, you might have health insurance, but it doesn't mean you can afford to actually use it with high deductibles and copays. And so there you go. And by the way, additionally, some firms even go so far as to provide incentives for workers not to enroll in their healthcare plans. Oh yeah, no, this is really expensive, so don't enroll. Okay, don't enroll because we don't want to help pay for that. And so just don't do it. Okay, don't do it, please. Here, we'll give you like an extra 25 cents an hour to not enroll in the healthcare plan. Oh, and we'll throw in a pizza party. Okay, so yeah, that's how that goes. Schaefer noted that the Medicaid expansion was another option for those with incomes up to 138% of the federal poverty line to have coverage that would allow them to see doctors, get prescriptions, whatever they need, without the emergency room being their only option. Evidence suggests that the Medicaid expansion makes it easier for people to get healthy and hold down a job or get a better one, not the other way around. And of course, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. Republicans don't want that. They do not want poor people, to be able to have health insurance, health care. So now Hassett, he's going to lie about all of this. He says the idea that that's going to cause a massive hemorrhaging in the availability of insurance doesn't make a lot of sense to us. Well, that's maybe because you're either dumb or a liar, or both. He added, it's sound budgetary politics. And I think that nobody's going to lose their insurance. Oh, did you hear that? No, but nobody's going to lose their insurance. Not a single person. Ain't nobody losing their insurance, says Kevin Hassett. Oh, okay, he's not very good at this, is he? Nope. So, wait. That means if nobody's going to lose their insurance, then what about the people on Medicaid? So, are you saying that everyone who could lose Medicaid would be guaranteed a job then? Because, again, you said that, first of all, nobody's going to lose their insurance. And second of all, a job pretty much is the only guarantee of getting insurance. So, if you're working, you're guaranteed to get health care. That's the only way. It's the best way. Okay. Well, so that means that they've got a plan, right? Yes. Yes, they do. Wait, what? Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, they have a plan.
There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
That was Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins openly saying that this administration plans to get the people on Medicaid to go work in the fields. And there it is. Work in the fields for very little pay in a very, very, very difficult job. And maybe, just maybe, you get to keep your health insurance. Oh, yeah. And there you go. The irony there, of course, is that there would likely be a lot of impoverished Trump voters that end up having to work in the fields because a lot of them are also on Medicaid. So, yeah. And of course, they would be the ones replacing the migrant labor that they so wanted to kick out of the country. It would be irony on top of irony here. I'm not sure how well that's going to go, how well that's going to be received. Imagine trying to get your local Trumper, right, to go and work in the fields doing the jobs that immigrants were doing just to keep their Medicare or Medicaid. Yeah, I can't imagine that would go very well. But I suppose for those people, they're going to get the day that they voted for. All right. I'm already to the last story, so it's crazy. But yeah, the Johnson Amendment. Oh boy. The Trump Internal Revenue Service just struck a blow against secular government, as well as, of course, money, any rules against money in politics. But I'll get to that point. But basically, they've allowed pastors and churches to endorse political candidates without losing their tax-exempt status. Now, this comes from a lawsuit from two Texas churches that sued the IRS over the Johnson Amendment. It's a ban on religious and secular tax-exempt nonprofits that promote political candidates. Now, in a court filing submitted on Monday, the IRS agreed to a carve-out from the ban for churches and other tax-exempt religious institutions. Now, the carve-out only applies to them. The prohibitions remain in place for secular organizations, for the other nonprofits, okay? Because I mean, it's just to show you how biased it is in favor of these religious organizations, specifically Christian churches. Look, this is Christian nationalism in action, folks, okay? The churches, they get the exception, but no one else does. And by the way, I doubt that this will apply to the synagogues and especially the mosques. I don't think that they'll be able to get away with this either. I couldn't imagine that, right? I think it's just going to be the Christian churches that are going to be allowed to play without paying. Okay. That said, they've been doing this in practice for a long time. The government has been extremely lax and wary about coming after the churches when they actually do violate the Johnson Amendment. I mean, even when the churches were trying to goad the IRS into coming after them, they still didn't. And I've got a couple of examples here. During the presidency of Barack Obama, hundreds of evangelical churches participated in something called Pulpit Freedom Sunday, where they had proudly and openly endorsed Republican candidates. And to kind of, hammer this whole thing home, they filmed it and then sent the sermons directly to the IRS saying, come on, come after me if you dare. So, yeah, they completely violated the Johnson Amendment, and the IRS was like, what are you going to do? You can't come after those guys. So they had every reason to revoke the church's tax-exempt status, but they never did. They never did. Well, okay, they did it once. Just before the 1992 elections, a group called Branch Ministries actually ran a full-page newspaper ad urging people not to vote for Bill Clinton. The IRS revoked the group's tax-exempt status. They sued, the IRS won. So that's the only time that the IRS actually did so. And of course, it was a victory for them. But all the other times, the IRS is like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? This, despite the fact that the churches are openly endorsing candidates. Yes, some of them did endorse Democrats. You're looking at the HBCs, of course, but most of the churches went for the Republicans. In fact, in 2022, ProPublica looked into this, published a huge report, and they do a lot of great reporting, by the way. They found 18 churches over the previous 2 years, just over the past 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. They found 18 churches violating the Johnson Amendment. Yeah, and of course, that's just what they found. It's very likely that there were many, many more. From the report, the IRS has largely abdicated its enforcement responsibilities as churches have become more brazen. In fact, the number of apparent violations found by ProPublica and the Tribune and confirmed by 3 nonprofit tax law experts are greater than the total number of churches the federal agency has investigated for intervening in political campaigns over the past decade, according to records obtained by the news organizations. Now, the IRS was asked about that, and a spokesperson said that the agency, and you're going to love this response, the agency cannot comment on, neither confirm nor deny investigations in progress, completed in the past, nor contemplated. Asked about enforcement efforts over the past decade, the IRS pointed the news organizations to annual reports that do not contain any of that information that they had asked for. Well, that's pretty shady, isn't it? Yeah, I can't confirm or deny that these churches are violating the law. We don't have any information. Here's some, sources of information that actually don't contain anything that you were asking for. Have fun. Well, no. Now, as Andrew Seidel of Americans United for Separation of Church and State told reporters at the time, churches already don't tell the IRS how much money they're taking in or where it's going. Well, that's because they're tax exempt, right? That's part of what having that specific status and designation under the IRS gets them. By giving them enough leeway to endorse candidates, the IRS was essentially creating super PACs that are black holes. And so that's where it intersects with money in politics. And so that's another huge problem with this. And you wonder why we've been having a pretty big Christian nationalism problem. I mean, it's gone so far that it's right at the top now. And we are essentially a Christian nationalist government now. Disastrous. But don't worry, though. Jonathan L. Blacker, a Justice Department lawyer representing the IRS, argued that the churches could freely endorse the candidates without penalty because they weren't really violating the Johnson Amendment. No, that's not politicking. Churches endorsing a candidate openly, that's not politicking at all. No, instead, they argued that the endorsements from the pulpit were really more like a family discussion concerning the candidate. It's a family, everybody. A family discussion. Oh, okay. But look, again, yes, this effectively kills the Johnson Amendment, but only for the churches. Because it still exists. Donald Trump did not strike it down, even though he claims to have done so, but he didn't. It is on the books. And if it wasn't, the IRS wouldn't have had to make a carve-out for it. And they also wouldn't have argued that this does not run afoul of the Johnson Amendment as properly interpreted. Which means there is a reason that they did it this way. So that the churches could, of course, get their exemption. While secular nonprofits, well, they're still, bound by this. They're not able to endorse candidates and keep their tax-exempt status. So this allows Christian conservative houses of worship to endorse candidates during their sermons without having to pay taxes. In a way, they're now able to advocate for representation without being subject to taxation. Now, I remember no taxation without representation, but it's now the other way. They get representation without having to pay taxation. They're not, the rule was supposed to be, okay, if you want to play in politics, then you got to pay. And if you, don't want to pay the taxes, that's fine. Just don't get involved in politics. But the churches are like, no, we want both. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want to be involved in politics and endorse Republicans and not have to pay taxes. And they just got it. They're able to do that. And look, it goes further than that, though. Because think about the tithes. I mean, think about that money. How much of that money is going to be set aside to fund those politicians that they're endorsing? You think about that. Think about that. I mean, think about how the fact that, yes, the conservative Supreme Court has basically designated money as political speech. Now these churches have more of a freedom to speak up and endorse specific candidates. So, I mean, what's to prevent them from taking money and just handing it to the politicians and saying, hey, this is our speech rights? Nothing. And so, and not only that, but also, since there's still technically limits on individual donations in politics, right? So billionaires, if they want to give a large sum of money, yes, they can give it to a super PAC. Or now they can give it to a church, which can funnel it through the church to that politician, and they can call it my free speech rights. And there it is. And again, these churches can do this, operate this way, tax-free. They're essentially being subsidized by the American taxpayer. That's it. I mean, yes, we're subsidizing Republican politics and religion now. They've merged the churches with the Republican Party. This is the most official way of doing that. According to American Humanist Association Executive Director Fish Stark, who released a statement, quote, "This is another dark day for our democracy. The Johnson Amendment, though weakened over the years by lax enforcement, is the small but mighty dam standing in the way of a torrent of dark money influencing our elections," or just buying it right off. Now that the Trump administration has opened the door to pastors and houses of worship explicitly backing candidates for office, all bets are off. There will be little to stop billionaires from funneling money through the churches to buy our elections, and they will get a tax write-off for doing it, all subsidized by American taxpayers. Weakening the Johnson Amendment to consolidate political power has long been a priority for Christian nationalists. And now they have the megaphone they've been waiting for decades. Americans United for Separation of Church and State and State President and CEO Rachel Laser issued this following statement, quote, "The Trump administration's radical reinterpretation of the Johnson Amendment is a brazen attack on church and state separation that threatens our democracy by favoring houses of worship over other nonprofits and inserting them into partisan politics. It's President Trump and his Christian nationalist allies' signature move, exploiting religion to boost their own political power. For more than 70 years, the Johnson Amendment has reflected the will of the American people, the majority of whom want to protect the integrity of our elections and shield our houses of worship from the corrupting influences of partisan politicking. And the IRS's proposal to exempt houses of worship and religious organizations from the law, but still enforce it for secular nonprofits, would grant special favor to religion, an unconstitutional violation of church-state separation. We urge the court to reject the administration's latest gambit to rewrite the law through the judicial system." Look, this is clearly unconstitutional, but I'm afraid that at the end of the day, that is not going to matter at all. Again, if this goes through the court system, and that's what these statements are referring to, right? Where's it going to end up? Supreme Court. Oh, yes. The Supreme Court that is massively controlled by the right wing. They control the courts. And this court has ruled their way on every single religious freedom issue that has come across their desk. I have very few hopes in being able to stop this. I'm not saying that we shouldn't fight against it. Of course we should. Just have to figure out how. And right now, the only thing that I know how to do is to try to inform people, to let people know exactly what this administration is doing. And that, yes, this is Project 2025. This is the Christian nationalist playbook. And this is what they're doing. And this is what they're doing to try to break down the wall separating church and state. If you are uncomfortable with that, if you're uncomfortable with becoming a Christian theocracy, then you ought to get real pissed about this. And should be ready to defend our institutions, defend our Constitution against these incredibly illegal rulings and carve-outs. They open the door for liberal and progressive churches and wealth to do the same, so there is that. That is true, yes. But I don't think they're counting on that being too much of a factor. Because, let's be clear, some of the biggest mega churches are the prosperity gospel churches, which are definitely not liberal or progressive. The only thing that you can say is, well, it's going to help out the HBCUs, right? It will. And that's really the only small possible bright spot. But again, just like in many other, avenues, average people, regular people are just snowed under or going to be snowed under a just gigantic torrent of dark right-wing money. And that is, again, one of the biggest problems here. Oh, remember the Supreme Court did rule against that public religious school. Yeah, that is one of the rare rulings. That's true. That's true. Okay. Super chats here. Got a couple. Rachel Atwood says, has anybody asked Obama if he regrets hiring Homan? He should, but, look, I'm going to piss some people off probably by saying this, but it seems like the only time Obama pops his head out is to criticize somebody on the left, or to team up with George W. Bush to say, hey, whoa, that's not cool. Trump, maybe you shouldn't do that. That's a naughty. And that's about it. Yeah, I don't think that he or others is taking what's going on here in this country with the seriousness and gravitas that it deserves. Looks like it's for all religions, not just Christians. Technically, but I don't think that I really don't think they're gonna allow a mosque to get away with this. I mean, you look at the vindictiveness of the Trump administration and how much they hate Muslims. I just wouldn't be surprised if they made it so that only the Christian churches and not mosques or synagogues or whatever, be able to use this, this carve out. What else do you expect Obama to do? He's not a politician. I expect him to be a bit more aggressive. I mean, certainly he could do that. Use his, bully pulpit. Well, he used to have a bully pulpit, but he still has a lot of influence, especially in the Democratic Party. I guess at the very least, he could stop trying to prevent the Democratic Party from fielding candidates who might actually oppose Donald Trump. And so far, you've had all the establishment folks trying to crush Zohran Mamdani, trying to come after him, along with help with the New York Times. So I think he could do a lot more, or at the very least, get out of the way in efforts to reform the Democratic Party into one that can actually stand up and fight against Donald Trump. He is very popular with the Democrats, yes. But that's a fair question, by the way. And so, hopefully I answered that. Super chats, VMan29397 said, hey Jeff, did you hear about Bad Bunny roasting Trump in his latest music video with an AI voice, Trump apologizing to Latin immigrants? And I didn't hear about that, but I'm not like a big music guy either. Zohran Mamdani is somebody I believe could be really strong in the future. They're just making him more popular by attacking him. Yeah, like the New York Times especially is one of the stories that I was going to do today that I didn't have time to prepare was all the attacks on Mamdani from the New York Times and the establishment. Conservatives calling the New York Times left-leaning is hilarious. True. They have peddled so much anti-trans nonsense and constantly run to what's that a-hole's name? Now I'm blanking on his name, but they keep running to him as an expert on trans issues and other issues like that. Oh God, I now for some reason I cannot remember that person's name. So it frustrates me every time it happens. But the old heads being so angry at Mamdani is refreshing. I agree. I thought it was Bill Clinton. Again, a lot of the Democratic establishment supported Cuomo, even after the fact that he is a sex pest, and got people killed in New York during the pandemic. Didn't matter because we gotta crush the Democratic Socialist. Yeah. Such old times thought we need young, strong vision like Mamdani in New York, so hope he wins in New York. The old guard, as much as I admire them, do need to get out of the way. I I mean, I will say that I don't admire them, but I largely, I pretty much agree with everything else that you said. And so that's good. And I'm glad that you are on the side of on our side on this one. And there's a lot of people on the side of letting, of having the old guard step out of the way and allow newer, younger, more progressive fighters into these positions that they're desperately needed in. Because right now the Democratic Party it feels leaderless, it feels feckless, and it feels like it just can't meet the moment. I mean, can you think that Chuck Schumer is able to meet the moment right now, or Hakeem Jeffries? I don't think so. I just don't feel it. And by the way, even some of the older progressives, eventually, like Bernie Sanders, I love the guy, but yeah, he's up there and he's going to need to retire as well. But the difference though is that Bernie Sanders knows that, and he is actively trying to pass the torch to people like AOC. And so that's really the difference, is that he knows when to let go and pass the torch, and retire gracefully into the retire gracefully. And so there you go. All right. So many horrible things Trump has done this year, and all the representatives care about right now is, yep, the Epstein files. Yeah, there is that. True, that is true. All right, well, that's all I've got for y'all today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the super chats. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I go live every day about 2 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow I'll actually be doing the live stream on thisspace.tv. So check that out if you want to see the live show. If you want to see me in the live show, do that. Go there. Subscribe to thisspace.tv. Again, that's where I'm going to be doing my live stream tomorrow, and then we'll be back on this channel Thursday, Friday. So every Wednesday, join me on this space, and then stick around for some of the excellent programming on that channel as well. So support them. Sign up, become a subscriber to this space, and help them grow, because it's a collaborative effort. It's the left, people on the left trying to get together to create a network of creators, and I'm really happy to be a part of this space, and to do my show on it. Hold on here. RB says ageism is very stupid. Is what I'm saying though ageist? That's the thing. We've had, and the reason I say that is because you've had how many Democrats die in office, which could have prevented had they not died, which is unfortunate, right? Had they not died, or had they been replaced by people who are younger, and healthier. Okay, and again, I'm not knocking them. Again, it's a total tragedy that they died in office. But had they not been there and had not died in office, they could have perhaps stopped the big beautiful bill. But they didn't. And so that's one of the problems here. Again, we are all human. We are all mortal. And so if you have a situation where you got so many people that are on the edge of death that are still in office and shouldn't be, and I think of Dianne Feinstein as a really great example. Like, no, there's no reason that Feinstein, her mental faculties were essentially gone. It was elder abuse keeping her in that position. I mean, and then her dying in office, and then you can also think of, Supreme Court, the Supreme Court justice, she died in office. For some reason, I'm blanking on her name. I don't know why. But she died in office, and now, yes, now we have an even more right-wing Supreme Court. But I don't know, would have maybe made a difference. And so it is the lack of being able to, allow some of these members who have served in government for a very long time to step down. Ginsburg, thank you. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, to step down and allow for younger leadership or younger, progressives to take those positions. I mean, not allowing them to do that is partly why we're in this position to begin with. And so, yeah, something needs to happen. That I may not agree with David Hogg on like everything, obviously. Although I think there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of agreement, especially on the issue of, hey, we need to go after and primary these, the do-nothing Democrats, the people that are, blocking younger people from taking over these positions. I don't necessarily agree with 100% of his picks, but I think the mission there is legit. And so, seeing what the Democratic Party did to him, it doesn't give me a lot of hope. And that's unfortunate because we need hope now more than ever. All right. Joe Neal, thank you for becoming a member. If you want to become a member, hit the join button below. And if you want to support, another way, support the show without, giving Google or Alphabet your money, you can always become a patron too, patreon.com/jeffwaldorf. And look, even if you're not a patron, even if you're not a paying member, you can still get access to listen to the show ad-free over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/jeffwaldorf. So all you have to do is sign up, and you can just have access to the library of shows that I have uploaded. So, you can catch up on some of the other stories that we've done, the live streams, and it's all free for you. So I try not to paywall people. But I just do ask that if you enjoy the work and if you want to support the channel and you have the means to do so, please sign up, throw a couple of bucks my way, instead of getting a coffee or something. And I'll be appreciative, and I will continue to try to deliver, I would think, high quality content. Okay. Anyway, thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, everybody. We'll see you here, thisspace.tv, tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.